Hey everyone, so taking a detour today to provide you a recommendation list of occult and specifically satanic related films. Because this is a very niche topic within horror or subgenre, it does happen to intersect with religious or cults, supernatural possession, or of the demonic influence variety. So I had plenty of options to choose from. Pick your poison, because there's something for everyone. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off with the first one being 2014 Starry Eyes. An aspiring actress struggles to secure a job in Hollywood's cutthroat industry. However, when an audition for a leading role brings her in contact with a nefarious production company, she'll discover just how far the price of stardom truly is. It does star Alex Esso, who you may recognize from movies like The Pope's Exorcist, Dr. Sleep, Mike Flanagan's Netflix series Midnight Mass. So she does play the character of Sarah, who goes to this open audition for this new movie called The Silver Scream under the production company Astraeus. She fails her audition, and it isn't until one of the members notices some of her habits start to surface that they become interested and see her as a viable candidate. She ends up getting the leading role. But of course, like I said, based off the synopsis, everything has a cost. This movie is one of the most enjoyable experiences because of a lot of the body horror within this movie, and the transformation does touch upon or hone in on the audition couch process, predatory behavior that comes along with it. Sarah is a character that you feel sympathy towards because she is working this dead-end job. She has a boss who's a pervert, played by Pat Healy, by the way, who you may have seen also in like Compliance or The Innkeepers. Also, she has this circle of friends, this group of friends who are like these starving artists. They're critical of her, or they're not as supportive. The reason why I love this movie and why I'd recommend it is, of course, because of the body horror, like I stated earlier, meshed with the occult or satanic themes that it's got going on that's central to the plot. The cult, under the guise of the production company, like their veneration for Astraeus, which is in fact a Greek mythological god, and how it's used to fit their agenda. Next, we have 1977's Alucarda. Two teenage orphan girls residing in a Catholic convent wander off into a crypt where they unknowingly unleash an evil force. From there, the girls are plagued with bursts of ornery behavior, professing their allegiance to Satan and participating in blood-soaked rituals. This one is directed by Juan Lopez Moctezuma, who I am not very familiar with. This is a first-time watch for me, and I don't know where I've been that I missed out. A very enjoyable watch. So I do know that he was a producer on one of Jodorowsky's films, El Topo, and this movie, the production design of it, like from whether the girls are in the convent or outside, it's just so beautiful. It's very unique as far as like the nuns within the movie. The habit that they wear, gauze-like, I don't know, it's very unique. If I really could describe it, it touches upon themes of like sexual repression and identity. It has a pretty swift runtime. It does play out sort of like a fable or a fairy tale. Now, the storytelling, I feel like there are points where I'm like missing some context, or maybe they're just choosing not to explore certain things because we just jump right into it as far as like the girls once they first meet. There is another opening to it, but as far as the girls actually meeting and their interaction, they just have a quick connection and just run off. And I don't know, certain parts of the movie I do feel like I'm missing some information, but maybe that's the whole point or what they were trying to go for. And I can't emphasize it enough, but toward the end of this movie, it is just so bloody, and it's got that really bright red blood, and visually it's just really an appealing movie. All right, next we have a recent one. So it is 2024's Late Night with the Devil. A live television broadcast in 1977 goes horribly wrong, unleashing evil into the nation's living rooms. Played by David Desmalchian, the movie does follow late night talk show host Jack Delroy of Night Owls, who is going through the motions during Sweeps Week as ratings of the show plummet, coming second to Johnny Carson, and also dealing with the loss of his wife. It's in its 6th season, so hoping to impress or wow execs, they throw this Halloween special. So keeping in line with the holiday spirit, they bring on a skeptic, psychic, a parapsychologist, their subject, a young girl who does have a supernatural affliction. This is one of the movies from 2024 that I gave a 3.5 out of 5. I mean, I really enjoyed my time, especially the second viewing with Blair's grandma, because she grew up on Johnny Carson. The way it's shot, it's very convincing at first. She's looking through Google to find this late night talk show host. She's like, I know about Johnny Carson, but who is this guy? And so me, being the little shit that I am, I didn't tell her, so I just waited for her to like kind of let it click. And it isn't until like the horror elements actually start to kick in that she's like, okay, this is just a movie. But it was a lot of fun. So what I do like about this movie a lot is the subplot involving Abraxas, the mass suicide cult. I wish we would have learned a lot more. And unlike a lot of people who were really upset and jumped on a bandwagon about the interstitials, I am not one of those people. I find it kind of counterproductive to just crap on a movie and just be like, oh, I was told that this has AI, therefore I'm not supporting it. Because in a way, you're not contributing to anything by that statement, because there's so many people who worked on this film. I'm kind of like, you know, more of a centrist when it comes to the idea of AI. I think it is a tool that can help, but I feel like when Late Night with the Devil came out, that comment was made on Letterboxd, and then people were jumping on the bandwagon with it. Raising awareness or having a concern is one thing, but completely banning a movie or saying like, I'm not going to support them is just idiotic to me, but I digress. Late Night with the Devil is a really good movie. I would highly recommend it. Next, we have 2009's The House of the Devil. College student Samantha Hughes finds herself desperate for cash in order to come up with the first month's rent of a new apartment. She responds to a babysitter ad placed by Mr. Ullman. Despite her and her best friend Megan's hesitation of the Ullmans, Sam agrees to take the job. Her night becomes a fight for survival involving a ritual and a lunar eclipse. And of course, this one is directed by Ty West, so this is one of the most impeccable movies when it comes to being set in the 80s, because the 80s flair, the tone, the dialogue, the humor, just everything about it, like the filter, whatever they're using to like color grade or like have that retro look to it, they did really well. Because the first time I watched this movie, I really thought it was set in the 80s, and this was like before I was really familiar with Ty West. The film is set in 1985, a decade floored with satanic panic. So in relation to that, what I like about this movie is the dialogue or exchange between Mr. Ullman and Sam when they're having this conversation about like, oh, well, I didn't think you would actually show up, and you know, you just have to be cautious. There are a lot of weirdos. That's not verbatim, but to that extent, because he wasn't so forthcoming with the babysitting gig. With saying that, I do like that the movie is so contained. It's not trying to be, I don't know how to really explain this movie, like larger than life or do like the absolute most. I think some people might find it boring, or that it might drag on, or that it's not as like tense. But for me, it was the opposite, because I was just anticipating what could this group of people be like, you know, as far like it's pretty obvious it's a cult, but as far as to what extent, I would highly recommend, if you haven't watched this one, to give it a chance. Next, we have 1977's Inquisition. In 16th century France, a magistrate and his judicial associates travel through plague-infected towns, persecuting those accused of being heretics, witches, and devil worshippers. When Bernard de Fosse and his colleagues make it to Peyriac, the Inquisitor falls in love with the mayor's daughter, Catherine, and it isn't long before a full-blown witch hunt runs rampant, causing her to make a pact with the devil. So this is directed by Paul Naschy. This is his directorial debut, if I'm not mistaken, and he does play 3 characters within this film, so de Fosse, the Grim Reaper, and Satan. This is my introduction to his films. Absolutely love this movie. I have to say real quick, like just interject this, like I watched plenty, like more than a handful of movies set in the 70s that are satanic related horror films. And I have to say, like, that decade is so saturated, which makes sense because it's a precursor to the satanic panic era, the 80s, that 60s, 70s era with like the sexual liberation, televangelist, The Exorcist, or Rosemary's Baby, or The Omen, you know, big influences like that. There's so many factors to take into consideration as far as like media, because I was just like, why was there so much in this decade? The reason why I bring that up is because you're only going to see 2 movies from the 70s on this list, Alucarda and Inquisition, because those were by far my favorites. There's so many from this decade that I was just not really a fan of. A lot of people seem to like some other ones, and I was just like, not really feeling them. What I like about this movie that it makes it very obvious and apparent is the pious nature of the most corrupt and terrible people condemning those who haven't done anything. But it's just so easily done by one of the servants, the way he chooses to be just a complete incel because he can't have his way with these women. So he decides to accuse them of witchcraft. And yes, of course, like witchcraft is a major part of the movie. I feel like the satanic plot points are more of a subplot, but I still wanted to include this because it's all relevant. And there's a lot of occult related activities happening within this movie, especially the part where we do get to see like this Last Supper sort of situation where all the followers are around this demonic beast. I really enjoyed that scene in particular, and I like Catherine's transformation. But yeah, this is one of those movies that I really enjoy as far as like having multiple subplots, because there's also like a love story going on. I'm not going to say any more. If you have the opportunity, please watch this one. 1971's Don't Deliver Us from Evil. Best friends Anne and Laure spend their summer vacation committing a series of misdeeds while enjoying poems about death and devoting their lives to Satan. The duo's antics gradually worsen, having real-life consequences. Now, this movie is loosely based on the Parker Hume murder case of 1954 that took place in New Zealand. There is another movie that I would highly recommend called Heavenly Creatures, which is directed by Peter Jackson, that came out in 1994, and it does star Melanie Lynskey and also Kate Winslet. I would highly recommend that movie, and it has a more accurate portrayal of what happened as opposed to this one, which leans into the satanic route. From my understanding, I don't think the girls were ever involved in any sort of Satanism or took any satanic vows. They did talk about like a fourth world, like another version of heaven, or they did denounce like Christianity, but not in like what this movie is about. Now, when I did watch this movie, I did find it very interesting. It is a French horror drama, is banned or was banned in several countries. And I can see why. It does have like more innocent or harmless misdeeds, and then it incrementally just gets worse as the movie goes on, because the girls find themselves in these sort of situations where, I mean, there's like attempted rape. I think where it has this like different like shade of gray, or some of these areas that are really weird when you watch it because they're aware of their actions. Like, despite them being young girls, which is what's startling about this movie, is like what makes it horrifying is that they're such young girls, yet there's no empathy. There's just no care in the world, whether they're harming animals or setting, you know, somebody's farm on fire or just doing something really horrible. They don't care. The thing that gets really annoying, and I don't think you have to like every single character in a movie, but I think that's what makes it difficult with these girls, is that they're so unlikable and so nasty and heinous. Like, some of the visual aesthetics, like, super pleasing. Like the satanic vows, I love that scene. I love the music in this movie, what's being played. But then toward the end of this movie, it just, I think it's what reeled me back into it. Damn, that is a really good ending. Yeah, so if you haven't watched this movie, I don't know if I've convinced you to watch this or if I've turned you away from it, but if you haven't watched it, give it a chance. Okay, and next we have 2007's Borderland. On a trip to a Mexican border town, three college friends stumble upon a human sacrifice cult. This one is written and directed by Zev Berman, and it does star Brian Presley, who plays Ed, Ryder Strong, who plays Phil, and also Jake Muxworthy, who plays Henry. Basically, the three friends' night of fun, consuming alcohol, mushrooms, and behaving like morons in unfamiliar territory, goes completely left when one of their friends goes missing, and to the point where they go to police. Police don't even want to get involved, do not want to help them whatsoever, because the border town, how lawless it is run by the drug cartel. And not only that, but they're also a satanic human sacrificing cult. Now, I do want to say the first time I did watch this movie, I was in high school when this came out, so it absolutely terrified me. And there is a very specific scene that comes to mind. One of the characters, the D-bag of the group, who's just very vocal, just escalates the situation even more. It's when they catch up with him and they're running through like this hotel trying to find him with machetes in hand. Absolutely terrified me. That definitely was a suspenseful moment. However, rewatching this movie recently, I do still find it, like, certain scenes do have like a terrifying edge to it because this is based on a real life case. I think it's good. I don't think it's like as like impactful as like when I was younger. It's so interesting when you do rewatch movies and you're like, oh yeah, like I was afraid of that. The real life case though, that is absolutely terrifying. So this movie is based on the true story of Mark Kilroy, a Texas college student who was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered while on spring break in Matamoros, Mexico. His vehicle was parked in the border town of Brownville when he and his three friends reached Matamoros to celebrate upon their second night he had gone missing. There are more details from when the police did find his mutilated body, like at the ranch outside of Matamoros, being operated by a drug trafficking organization with ties to like occult and satanic rituals, led by Adolfo Constanzo. The real life case is a lot more alarming than the movie. You know, if you're wanting something different, but in kind of the same vein as Hostel, being in a foreign or unknown place. The next movie that I have actually also came out in 2024, and that is The First Omen. An American novitiate arrives in Rome eager to take her vows, but begins to question her own faith when she uncovers a terrifying conspiracy to bring about the birth of evil incarnate, I do think that this is a very well-told, well-made film. I think it's one of the most stunning movies on this list. It's just the entire cinematography, the shots, like specifically the beginning of this movie, which is like kind of a nod to The Omen from 1976, the way Father Brennan dies in that movie. But what we see happen in this one, when Father Brennan is talking to Father Harris, and then what happens, it's pretty brutal and messed up. Like just seeing that, just like, ugh, and just even thinking about it, if you know, you know. I'm not going to go too into detail, but it's just like seeing the stained glass, the kill in the first few moments. It's beautiful, which I know probably sounds really sickening, but it's just the way it's framed. A lot of the shots, the way things are framed. I personally really enjoyed Nell Tiger-Free's character of Margaret and following these very small group of radicals, this sect of people who have a very specific agenda in mind. Without spoiling too much or saying too much, if you haven't watched this movie, it is very disturbing. Like the first time I watched this movie, it was pretty messed up, but upon my rewatch, I think it really just sank in how utterly disgusting their plan truly is. And then it was really interesting rewatching The Omen and seeing the graveside where they have the jackal, and then how it's like repurposed or retcon in this movie. Now, it could be that I don't really have any major ties to this movie, or it's not one that I really seek out. So I'm not like one of those fans or major fans that got like really offended or just weren't really feeling a prequel or felt that a prequel was necessary. I really did like the nods from the 1976 film. For example, Sister Angelica, when she mouths, "It's all for you," then she sets herself ablaze, hangs herself. I don't know what's my fascination or with this list as far as like immolating yourself, but there is one thing I did want to say about this movie, is that it did manage to alarm me, and that is with one particular scene when Margaret does faint. If you have seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, which is not like the most shocking part of the movie, but it is just like it's right in your face. Okay, and then the next film that I wanted to recommend would have to be 2014's Last Shift. Jessica Lauren, a rookie officer on her first assignment to work the last shift of a decommissioned police station, is plagued by strange occurrences revolving around a murderous cult, her deceased father, and several of the cult's victims. I do think that when I watched this movie the first time, I wasn't really like crazy about it, and I know I'm gonna sound like a hypocrite, but when Malum came out, even though I did like that movie, I think it made me realize like how much Last Shift is actually a really good movie, and it's a good standalone. Like, it did not need a remake or reimagining whatsoever. The psychological journey where it just really trips you out, where you're like discerning along with the main character what's real and what's not, because it does blur the lines there. I feel like Malum took it a step further with that, with the psychological journey. In this movie, there is a cult leader by the name of John Michael Payman. The cult itself, they follow, or I should say worship, this demon by the name of Payman, who is the king of hell, which might sound familiar because it is also the demon that is worshipped in the Ari Aster movie Hereditary. Now, this movie isn't perfect, it is flawed, and there are some cliches that I'm not a fan of, but it's not to the point where it's like grating. I think conceptually this movie is great, which is why I wanted to add it to this list. But if you haven't watched Last Shift, I would highly recommend that you watch this one and then go see Malum and let me know your thoughts as far as a comparison. But pretty much the same. The only real difference is one gets a little bit more convoluted for me, to be quite honest. Okay, and then the last movie, it's another 2024 release. That would be 2024's Apartment 7A, which I really did like, by the way. So this film does serve as a prequel to Rosemary's Baby, and it does take place months before Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse move into the Bramford Hotel. This one is set in 1965 in New York City, so the story does follow Terry Giannoffrio, played by Julia Garner, a dancer who has been down on her luck following an injury that halted her ambitions. Her life soon changes for the better or worse when she meets the Castevets, an older couple living in the Bramford Hotel. In extending their kindness, they allow Terry to move in. So I personally enjoy that the director of this film, Natalie Erica James, kept to the source material, but not so much that it felt like it was beat by beat the exact same rehashing of what we've seen. I felt like it was really refreshing to see a movie like this that does have a musical number in it. Just 2 for 2 when it comes to like prequels. What I really took away from it, or something that I just kept marveling over, would have to be the set design. And there's a particular scene in mind that is just so beautiful, stunning to look at, and the appearance of the devil in this movie, I interpret that as because we're following Terry, her life goals, her ambitions as a dancer, and you know, just wanting to have her name be in the limelight. That is why the devil appears that way. And again, going back to discussing points of view, so I really like the way the director injected as far as like the laundry scene when Terry and Rosemary first meet, the way it's done in Rosemary's Baby compared to this movie, to really add a spin to it. But if I could really describe this, I would say glittery, shimmering, unsettling at points, and demented. But anyway, hopefully I gave you a good list of movies to watch. Typically when I do my recommendation style videos, it's only 5 movies. Let me know if you guys have seen any of these. If you're a big horror movie buff and you've already seen these movies and you're like, All is Dread, you gave me nothing. However, if you aren't really into horror or just getting into horror, never seen any of these, then yeah, plenty to choose from. I haven't been really posting and just been kind of 9 to 5 job. And then also 2K25 just came out, WWE, and then I've just been playing Hello Kitty Island Adventure. Do not judge me. It's really cute and it's fun. Just reading a lot. As you can see, I've been a little book collector recently, just trying to figure out, because I have a lot of scrapped ideas that I've just been discarding. This would be one of them. And then I go back to it. I get so in my own head, and then I get back to it and I'm like, that was a really cool idea. Why did I just completely abandon that? Anyway, I will do my best. I don't know what I'm going to review next. I did see The Monkey and I was considering doing a review of that. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. Hopefully I gave you some movies to check out, and yeah, take care. Bye.